Oh hey, I'm going to say some words in this one. So, in my almost daily perusals of Nearmap, I noticed something interesting happening out in the new subdivisions on Melbourne's fringe, namely, the construction of cycleways separated from both the motor carriageway and the footpath. From the aerial imagery, it even appeared that these cycleways were built with priority at some roundabouts and side streets. This was so unexpected that it warranted a visit, so myself and a friend caught the train and went out to have a look. We cycled first to the Westbrook precinct, located right up against the metropolitan urban growth boundary, and got our first glimpse of the new paths. The cycleways appear to be the result of local precinct structure plans incorporated into the state's planning schemes that are moving away from the provision of unprotected on-street cycle lanes located on high-speed and high-volume roads, and which are often shared with car parking, to a mix of separated cycleways on street lanes and the traditional shared user path that usually follows a physical barrier such as a waterway, railway or freeway. The Westbrook plan shows a reasonably dense and well-connected cycle network. Here, the separated cycleways are represented by the green dots, the traditional shared user path is shown by the black dots, and the on-street cycle lanes are shown by the yellow squares. The cycleways are generous in width at approximately 3 metres, and the precinct plan states that the paths must cater for speeds up to 30 km per hour, and that priority must be achieved at minor side streets. We did find cycle priority at some side streets, but the signage varied wildly, and further down, in the Black Forest Road South precinct, we found cycle priority but with curbs that are so harsh that a bicycle may be damaged over time even at a slow speed. Imagine traversing these curbs using a human-powered mobility aid. We usually don't rattle motor vehicles to bits when we want to slow them down, so why do we do it to bicycles? Harsh curbs are also a problem where cycle priority has not been provided, including at roundabouts where the signage suggests that vehicles on the carriageway do not have to give way to the cycle path, despite the occasional green paint. However, space has been provided to allow cyclists to cross one lane at a time, and I am aware of a debate in the Netherlands, the cycling kingdom, as to whether cycle priority at roundabouts or carriageway priority is safer or more efficient, so we can probably debate this one further. Where priority should be provided though is at nearly every side street where signals have not been installed. It is lunacy to force the through walking and cycling paths to give way at side streets, even though partial priority still exists in law. This is widely unknown and unenforced law, yes, but still, we shouldn't be designing streets that encourage a person to violate the road rules, and we certainly shouldn't be encouraging motoring over walking and cycling, which is what this failure of priority will do. When it comes to pedestrian provision, the precinct plans require the standard suburban footway on both sides of the street and with a width of no less than 1.5 metres. However, I cannot imagine a person choosing to walk on these tiny little footpaths, which are often blocked by cars and overgrown vegetation, when they have a luxuriously wide cycleway right next to them. Personally, I don't think this sharing of infrastructure is likely to be a problem, especially with so few cyclists, which I'll talk about more in a moment. The only time I can imagine it being a problem is if an individual takes it upon themselves to enforce the separation, but that may be solved here with a shared user sign, and future precinct plans should consider how to better cater for walking rather than continuing to require what would likely be redundant infrastructure in most cases. While it's great to see somewhat considered planning for cycling as a means of mobility in these new subdivisions, it is important to ensure that active transport infrastructure is provided within adjacent pre-existing settlements, or the residents on the fringe will not be able to use their new paths to cycle anywhere worthwhile. Retrofitting existing suburbs will be difficult though, as they feature post-war curvilinear cul-de-sac horror street networks that are dreadful to navigate, that effectively prohibit walking, and that entrench motoring, since every route in and out of these estates is so much longer than necessary due to the roundabout path a traveller needs to take. Of course, the new developments will feature their own town centres, schools and other services in time, but looking back on more than 60 years of suburban sprawl, we still haven't managed to create a second inner Melbourne out in the suburbs that feature a well-diversified economy, with employment opportunities varying from the direct service industries all the way to professional and specialty industries, and without these, coupled with the outer suburbs' lack of social and recreational opportunities, it is difficult to imagine these areas becoming a walking and cycling metropolis. Again, this isn't to say that these cycle paths should not be provided, but we shouldn't expect miracles from their mere provision. It takes more to create a vibrant city. Further, the provision of walking and cycling paths has not been coupled with attempts to limit motor vehicle use. These new suburbs still feature enormous traffic sewers, some of which are under construction right now, and the new town centres showcased in precinct plans are little more than enormous car parks with shops around the edges. We know from the example of Stevenage in the United Kingdom that the mere provision of cycle infrastructure does not mean that a person is likely to choose to cycle instead of drive. In Stevenage, a generous road network with direct and universal access was built alongside its cycle network, and that, coupled with minimal traffic congestion, meant that a person had no incentive to choose a mode of transport that is more efficient than the car. But to end on a positive note, it may just be possible that the cycle networks in these new suburbs, and there's a lot of new suburbs coming, the suburban sprawl zone is huge. It may just be possible that cyclist numbers are boosted enough to provide the political pressure to retrofit walking and cycling infrastructure into existing settlements, and if this can be done with a corresponding program aimed at limiting motor vehicle use and promoting direct and frequent public transport, we could see some very interesting shifts in mode share in the coming decades.